everyone. Welcome to the second meeting of the Eastham Part-Time Resident Taxpayers Association. Association of the summer. We have several speakers. This morning we have Jackie Beebe, who is our town administrator since the spring, right?
That's correct.
When your term began, so to speak. Amy Ekman, who is a new but not really new selectman.
Retread.
Retread, okay, all right. Yes, you were off the board for how long?
3 years.
Off for 3, but she's back on again. And then we have Kent Fahrenkopf, who is the fire chief, and Ed Kohalik, who is the police chief.
Hello.
And our guest speaker this morning is Kathy Tevya, who is the acting or permanent? Acting National Seashore Park Superintendent. And we're very glad to have her. She, I'm sure, will have a lot of interesting things to tell us. I have a couple of things to tell you as members first off, and that is the meetings for next summer. You'll see them listed on the newsletter probably in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring, but just for a heads up, the first meeting is going to be on Saturday, July 7th, and the second meeting will be on Saturday, August 18th. But as I said, you will be seeing those several times in between. I'd also like to introduce our board members that are here today. We have Barbara Reed, who is down at the refreshment table. We have Jen Keene, who is our treasurer. Our secretary, she is doing the notes for him today. He's taking his oldest and first daughter to college. So it's an exciting day for them, I'm sure. George Lee was outside. He is back in again. He was at the front sign-in table. He's our membership chairman. We have Dave Crimmins, who is our newsletter chairman. He's down in the back there. And we have Larry Pasco right in the front. We have Sue Connor, who is our immediate past president. And we have TJ Keene, who is our organization administrator. And I think I got about everyone. And I also wanted to mention that we have Dave Connolly. Oh, I'm sorry, June Morris in the front row. Excuse me, June.
That's okay.
We have Dave Connolly in the far back. He is a past board member. He is also our organization's auditor. Another question for you as members. It came up during our board meetings about how many people attend both meetings in the summer, or how many attend July and not the August, or vice versa. So I wanted to ask you, how many of you were here for the July meeting as well? And the rest of you, I'm assuming this is your first meeting of the summer, correct? Thank you. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is our newsletter, which I'm sure you all really appreciate all the information that Dave Crimmins disseminates to you. Many of you receive it by email. I would dare to say most of you receive it by email. However, there are people who still prefer to receive it by U.S. Postal Service. I know that we have gotten messages, emails from some members who have said, well, I haven't got my newsletter yet. It should have been out on X date that it had been published. It was going to be out by this date, and I still haven't received it yet. And I just wanted to let you know that if you receive it by snail mail, you can expect it a week to 10 days later, just because of the fact that the printer has to get it packaged up and then it has to go through the Postal Service. Then if you were to receive it by email, you would get it almost instantaneously. So that might be something that you might want to consider. Okay, thank you. I think we're ready now for our secretary's report, and then we'll do our treasurer's report, and Jen's going to handle both.
Good morning. The meeting minutes from Dave Baxter are in the packet that was on everyone's chair. And to make things go a little quicker, I am thinking we should waive the reading of the minutes. But I do want to ask if there are any corrections or additions that anyone would have. Okay, not hearing any. I would like to get approval for the minutes.
So approved.
A second. Good. Everyone else? Aye. Okay. All right, so not secretary anymore. So now changing my hat to treasurer. The last 3 pages of the packet have, and since about half of you it looked like were here last meeting, there hasn't really been many changes for the balance sheet and income statement. We still have $59,500 in various CDs and other money market accounts. Our income statement, what I did this time was I broke it out into 2014, 15, 16, and then half of 2017. It's on page 11. And the one thing I would probably point out that if you look down at the net income on the bottom, in 2015 it was negative, in 2016 it went positive. And that was a couple of factors. The biggest one, the former treasurer, a lot of you pay via PayPal, and the PayPal had a big balance and he did not deposit that in 2015. It all went over in 2016, so there was a larger chunk that went in 2016, which is why 2016 looks like it's such a positive year and 2015 looks like a negative year. But one of the big things is the newsletters going electronic is saving us money. And the third thing that to note was in 2016 we did not do a charitable donation. Someone's going to come up and talk about our, every year we do give our half of our net income out. Larry's going to talk about this. And we were looking to give that to the library, and with the library in construction, we held off on that, so we'll be doing that this year. So that is the balance sheet and the income statement. And I do need to get approval of the 2018 proposed budget, and that is on the last page, on page 12. There really is not many differences between the 2017 budget and the 2018 budget. The three things that are different are the board of director expenses. We're going to drop those by $250 that we haven't been spending that. Marketing is going down by $250. We have worked out how to send letters to the new, any new residents, part-time residents, and so we've cut back expenses on that because there was a lot of duplication before with the past administrator. And so that $500 or so we are looking to put towards our website. Right now our website is a pretty basic website. One of the things we'd like to add is to make it a member-only site so that you could watch, if you couldn't come to these meetings, you could watch the videotape here and have member-only information on there that other people wouldn't get. So that would be adding about $480 to the website expense. And then basically having a net income of around $575. So does anyone have any questions or anything on the 2018 proposed budget? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve the 2018? Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. And that is my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Before we get into the committee reports, we have one person who was asked to have a couple of words with you. Oh. Dave Crimmins is giving me the message, and he can't hear me down in the back of the room. Okay. People who were here the last month may remember Bob C. He is, your official title is President of the Chapel in the Pines, the Yellow Church on Samoset Road.
Thank you, Helen. And for those of you who weren't here at the other meeting, we are undertaking a restoration project that will be getting underway in a few weeks, and will involve reshingling the roof of the chapel, restoring it to some of its glory from 1889 when it was built. It's one of the most historic buildings left in town that is pretty much unaltered. And it's used not only by the Nauset Fellowship, but by many community groups in town, and we're always open and welcome to anyone coming to visit attending our meetings on Sunday morning or having events there. We also, as you know, are right next to the brand new library, so we're very visible now. So this restoration project comes along at a very good time. We did get a generous grant from the town, which we thank the town for very much. We do need some additional funds to complete the project, so we're asking anyone who'd like to make a tax-deductible donation to the cause to join us in restoring this wonderful building. If you'd like more information, we have these brochures which have all the information, and we have some of these on the table in the back, but if you'd like one, just raise your hand right now and I can give you one, and please join us in this restoration effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. Moving along to our committee reports, we're going to have Dave Conley come up first for the auditor's report.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The report to Helen Kinsman, President of EPTRA, from David P. Conley. Subject: Annual Audit Calendar Year 2016. The date: August 19, 2017. I have reviewed the fiscal books for fiscal year 2016 and have found all receipts and expenditures to be in order. The fiscal records meet the standards as prescribed by general accounting standards. All checks written are supported by invoices or contracts. The Treasurer uses a software package, and this allows for an auditor to see all expenditures quickly and to align them with the monthly bank statements. It provides the association with all the reports it needs to ensure the association that its money is being properly spent. David P. Conley, Auditor.
Thank you, David. Next we have the membership report, Chairman George Leber.
Good morning. As of Thursday, we had 1,411 members, which is 10 more than we had during the July meeting. As you can see from the chart, we have 896 people who are currently paid up. That's 115 more than we had in July. We have 376 people who have only paid through 2016. That's 98 less than in July. And we have 139 people who last time they paid was in 2015. That's 7 less than last month. Those 139 people will be removed from membership if they do not pay by the fall of this year. We'll be sending them an amnesty letter to remind them that they are in arrears. Okay, the next slide. You can see our membership numbers over the years. As I said, this year, currently we have 1,411 members for 2017. Okay, then the next slide. Last month, people asked, where do people live when they're not in Eastham? This chart, not surprisingly, shows you that quite a few of our members come from Massachusetts. In fact, 582 of them do. Next is Connecticut at 297, then New York at 183, and from there it goes down. And you can see that Massachusetts supplies 41% of our members, Connecticut 21%, New York 13%, and the others 25%. Next slide, please. Okay, email addresses. Email is our way of contacting you in the off-season when something comes up we think you should be aware of, and the newsletter won't be coming out for a bit of time. So it's important that we have a correct email address for you. We have 1,222 good emails. We have 83 bad emails, and that means we can't contact you. And 106 are people who have not given us an email. We strongly suggest that you give us an email so that we can contact you with any news flash, anything that's happening in the town that you might want to be aware of while you're not here when you're back in your hometown. And as far as newsletter delivery, you can see that 796 people that got their newsletter electronically, which does save us a lot of money. Then we have 444 people who had it by the post office, and 171 never sent what they preferred, so we therefore by default send it by the U.S. Postal Service. So we thank our members who pay using PayPal. That cuts down a lot on the clerical work for our administrative assistant, and also that way your dues gets recorded instantaneously. You don't have to worry about a check being lost in the mail or whatever. And as always, we always are looking for new members to join the board, and any of you who are interested, please see me or one of the other board members, and we'd be glad to have a conversation with you. We'd love to have a few of you come and join us. Thank you.
George? You might want to remind people, I don't know if everybody knows that on PayPal you don't have to have an account, you need a PayPal account.
Right.
You can use a regular credit card. Right.
If you want to, if you go on to our site, our is it eprta.org site, there's a place to go on to paying your dues by using PayPal. You do not have to have a PayPal account. You can just use your regular credit card that you use for other things. And there's no fee as far as you're concerned. And I say it's, you save yourself a postage stamp, and it's, just done in instantaneously, and you're up to date. So we recommend that you do that. Yes?
How many part-time residents live in Eastham, do you know?
Yeah, I think I have that. Well, the part-time residents don't live in Eastham. Let's see. I have that someplace. There are approximately 3,600 part-time residence households out of a total of 5,900. So 3,600 out of 5,900 are part-time, and therefore cannot vote in Eastham. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Just a little addition to what George said, he mentioned about the ease of paying through PayPal and the question of your check possibly being lost or whatever. And it seems like this summer, at least 2 or 3 times that I can think of, we got emails from members who said that they had sent their check in for renewal of dues. It had yet to be cashed, and they wanted to know why it hadn't been cashed yet. Obviously, it can be done a lot quicker with PayPal, but the system for when you send it in by a check is that it's sent to the post office box in North Eastham, the organization post office box. Then someone has to go collect it, and then they have to send that to our organization administrator, TJ, who lives off Cape, before it gets posted and recorded as paid. So those are, steps that take time, and I have a feeling that that's why the people, I don't know, the time between the time that they sent the check and now they're questioning why it hasn't been cashed yet, but I'm sure it wasn't a huge length of time, but on the other hand, it would eliminate any problem like that. Thank you. All right, our next committee report is the Outreach Committee, and Larry Pascoe, as chairman of that committee, is going to talk about our outreach gift for this year.
Thank you and good morning. Finally solved my problem with the microphone. We were going to give an outreach gift to the new library last year, and a number of things came up, and we were not able to do that. We do want to give them a gift this year, and we will do that. What they want to do is in the back of the library where the property extends out towards the water. They would like to have some benches where they can have discussions and they can put some things on. And we said that would be fine. And again, any monies that we give for any of these things have to be, make sure that the town is not giving them money for those kinds of things as well. And the town is not giving them money for that. So there will be that, and we have one of our past presidents, Bob Overton, and a number of you I think would know who I'm talking about. He was very much involved in the town, and a plaque, okay, for commemorating Bob and the work he's done will be on display, and the library is going to arrange to have that plaque made up. So we're going to do that. The gift is not to exceed, I believe it's about $5,000, but it will be whatever the cost, okay, for those benches would be. So that's what we have proposed to do, and we wanted everybody here to know about it. And if there are any questions about it, or anything that you hear tonight, I have cards that we can give you to write your question out, and I will make sure that the proper person on the board gets that question and is able to answer it for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. In addition to what Larry said about a place where the library could hold small meetings or small events, Deb DeJonker-Berry, our library director, mentioned that it would also be a quiet place that people could just go, sit, meditate, look out at the pond. It would be a cool spot because it is in the shade. And she felt that it would be something that people would really enjoy. It's something that they had wanted to do, but obviously anything like that is not covered under the actual library construction budget, and the library building fund, as you're probably all aware, have been raising money over the last several years for things like furniture on the inside, the outdoor area in the courtyard now, several different things that were not covered in the actual construction budget. So this is why we have decided to go this direction. We had wanted to make a donation to the library at some point, but felt that we would wait until the building was completed and the people who were using it would have a better idea of what they would like to do. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is going to be June Morris. June is the chairman of the Bylaws Committee, and we have some bylaw changes that we would like your approval for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you all very much for coming today. I know that bylaws are not the most interesting subject, so I hope that you don't glaze over when I go through them, but these are necessary changes. And what I will do is I'll give you the rationale as to why we're proposing these changes. They're very simple, they're very straightforward, and I'll give you the rationale. So the first one is basically Article 4. And Article 4 basically talks about the president being able to appoint a parliamentarian, an historian, and an auditor. Now, the way the bylaws are written right now, we can only appoint them from other board members. So we thought to ourselves, with all of the expertise that's out here in our membership, we wanted the flexibility to be able to appoint an historian, an auditor, or a parliamentarian from the membership. So we've amended it to say that we could appoint them from the board or from other active members, which is all of you. So that's very basic, that's the rationale, very straightforward. The other change that's not on the slide, but I wanted to make sure that you know about it. The slide just basically talks about material changes, but I want to give you all the changes. And that is, when we have a past president such as Sue, they automatically become a member of our board for 2 years. But if we have a situation where the past president, for whatever reason, is unable to serve, you know, medical reasons or family reasons, what have you, we've amended the bylaw, or we've proposed an amendment to basically say that if the immediate past president cannot serve, then the past president prior to her or him would have the opportunity to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the term. So again, that's the rationale. It's very simple, very straightforward, but again, you know, the whole purpose of our meeting today is to keep you informed and to make sure that all of you as members understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's the story there. With respect to the next change, actually, TJ, it should be Article 5, so it's the third slide, Article 5 on meetings. Article 5 deals with meetings. Now, normally, our meetings are held on the first Saturday of July following the 4th, and then on the third Saturday of August. But you know, sometimes, and this is, again, I'm giving you the reason why, sometimes we might have some logistic issues. For example, getting the reservation for the Elks Hall, or what have you. So we wanted the flexibility to say that yes, this is our goal, to have these meetings right after the 4th of July and then again in August, but we've added just a very minor amendment that says, unless the board decides otherwise. And the reason for that, the flexibility, is we just want to have the ability to say, okay, it's not written in stone. If we have trouble getting this hall, we want the flexibility to be able to make a reservation for another date. But again, we would keep you fully informed, and the newsletter will keep you fully informed if we had any logistics issues. So that's the basic change there. Last change, which hopefully is again pretty straightforward, and it's actually Article 8. So TJ, if you want to flip back the slide to the administrator, it's actually Article 8. And TJ is an independent contractor. He's our outside administrator. He is appointed. The board shall have the power to appoint him. The one thing that the bylaws didn't have was that we wanted to be able to have a contract with our independent administrator. So basically, we've added a provision that says the compensation, the duties, and the term of the administrator will be covered by a contract between the administrator and the board of directors. So the whole idea here is, you know we need an administrator. He's doing a great job. He's helping us with all of the website, with all of the slides. He's doing a fantastic job, but we wanted you to know that this is the arrangement, that we have an independent contractor. He's not a member of the board, and we have a contract with him, and he has certain duties that he has to perform. And so that's basically it. Those are all the changes that we're proposing. And I want to see if anybody has any questions. Yes, Sue?
I think the members ought to know that we always have had a contract with the administrator.
Okay.
And it is a written contract and signed by the board representative, usually the president and the administrator.
Okay.
So it's not something new, it's just new into the bylaws.
New into the bylaws. That's a very good point, Sue. Thank you so much. In other words, what Sue is saying is that this has been our practice, but that we wanted to make sure that it was memorialized in the bylaws. So that's a very good, fine point, Sue. I'm glad you made that. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you for doing this. Do the members have to approve changes to this?
Yes, I was going to ask for a motion.
Okay.
That was my next.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure, sure.
Sorry, just glancing at these, I apologize. So
Sure.
if I missed something, but the previous conversation about the contribution to the library.
Yes.
And we're going to authorize up to 5,000, and I just happened to see in here a limitation of 1,000. So does the board have the ability to approve the whole 5,000, or do you need approval from the membership?
No, we actually have the authority to do that.
Okay.
Because we didn't make a charitable gift last year.
Okay.
So we have the authority to do that.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Okay. Yes, go right ahead.
The question is, when you are considering charitable contributions to the town,
Yes.
do you check or consult with the different needing areas? I know we have the Chapel of the Pines and we have the library.
Yes.
But also we've been to several Eastham Historical Society presentations, and that Eastham schoolhouse has suffered a great deal of deterioration and really is in need of help.
Yes. Well, we consider, that's a very good point. We do consider, and I obviously will defer to our chairman of the charitable organizations, but as a board, we do look at a variety of things. We looked at the recycling collectors at the beach 2 years ago. We've looked at not only the library, but at historical buildings. And our chairman of our outreach, Larry Pascoe, he's been doing a fantastic job reaching out to various community organizations. But we're always open to any suggestions that the membership has for charitable organizations that might need our assistance. I mean, we are basically a non-profit organization. We're here to try to help the town, try to enrich the town, try to increase its beauty and its cultural activities. So I would suggest that anybody here in the audience, if you have any suggestions as far as opportunities to make these charitable gifts, please let Larry know or let any of the members of the board know, and we would welcome your suggestions. Larry.
And we have some cards we'll give you as you hear these folks talk about what's going on. And if you have a question that hasn't come up, please write it out and I'll collect them and I will give it to the person who, has the ability to answer it properly, explain it, etc., etc.
Right. Thanks, Larry. Anybody else? Yes?
Yeah, so I guess I just want to follow up the other gentleman's question
Yes.
about the $1,000 limit. If it says $1,000, why do you say that you can spend $5,000?
Well, because it accumulated from last year. We had not made the contribution. But it doesn't say that in the bylaws. Let's see. What section are you in?
Well, I'm just looking at section 7, Article 7, Section 4A.
Okay. Article 7, Section 4A, the Executive Committee, okay, have the power to make purchases and contracts for the ordinary expenses, but he'll have no power to render the association liable for any extraordinary debt or expense. That provision is for debt or expenses. That's not for charitable contributions. In other words,
isn't a charitable contribution an expense?
Well, a charitable contribution is actually classified as a gift under the IRS code. It's not a debt. It's classified as a gift. Yes.
I'm sorry, and I don't take this the wrong way.
Right.
I have no objection to what you're doing. I'm thinking more just form over substance here.
Right.
And not getting the organization into trouble.
Right.
Because we're not following our bylaws.
Right.
But, I'm an accountant, so, excuse me.
Sure.
But, charitable contribution is
Yeah.
expense.
Okay.
Yeah, in that context.
Okay. Well, what I have is a suggestion. Perhaps we could make an amendment to this article. Yes?
Can I just add that our policy is, and we are bound by this policy, that every year we are bound to contribute 50% of our surplus to charitable activities. And we did not do that a year ago. So that is the reason that it is accumulated. Dave Connolly, you have something to add to that as well?
Well, what I was going to say was that the association not only has bylaws, but it also has policies as well. And if most people unfortunately have not seen the policy, but if you go to the section of policies, you will see that one of them says that we give 50% of our annual profit to a charity. So it's not covered in the bylaws, but it is covered under the policy.
And I guess the question would be whether or not we should put that in the bylaws.
That's a totally different organization or question, and that would be every policy that you have.
Yeah.
I don't think you want to do that.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, yes?
Can I just ask, I'm sorry for so long, just so I understand it, where do the policies come from? Do they have by membership? Are they authorized by the bylaws? Are they authorized by the charter? What gives the board, I guess, the right to policy?
I'm going to defer to the past president on that. The policies, you originally developed them? Dave? Yes.
Past president, that goes back to the 80s.
Yeah.
The policies simply are the way in which the board reacts to certain situations.
Yeah.
For example, part of the policy that the association works under is if you have somebody from the town who retires, and whether we give them a gift or a card, some form of recognition. So it simply are the things that the association acts upon over the course of doing its functions.
I would just make a
Yes,
suggestion. You probably should amend the bylaws to encompass whatever policy there is, because it does seem that at least this policy exceeds the authority granted by the bylaws.
Right. You know, that's not a bad suggestion. I think what we could do as a board, and I'm just throwing this out, is we could take a look at all of the policies that we have in place and determine which policies were the most material. In other words, look through the policies, determine what are most material, and then make a motion to include those in the bylaws. We won't be able to do that at this meeting, but certainly we could do that at our next meeting in 2018. Go right ahead.
I would suggest you refer that to a committee to study it and then offer it to the membership as to how to deal with it in terms of the recommendations.
Yes, we would definitely come back to the full membership and make a proposal, and also give you the reason why. In other words, just like I did today, give you the rationale as to why we're making each change. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this meeting. Nothing is written in stone. We're happy to have your suggestions. Yes?
Follow-up, when we look at the budget then for 2018 or prior budgets,
yes.
Would there be a line item for gifts?
I will defer to our treasurer. Would you normally have a line item for the gifts in the budget?
It's usually 50% of net income.
50% of net income, that's been the formula.
Well, it still should be entered as...
We can. We have.
Yeah, we should.
So we just started putting this on QuickBooks, so now that it's on QuickBooks, we can have a line, and we didn't give a gift this year, so now that it is, once we give a gift, there will be another line item saying gifts given.
Okay, that makes it transparent.
Yes.
Okay, and we do want to be transparent. Just no doubt about that. We want to be transparent. Yes?
I'm sorry I started this whole mess.
That's okay.
One more question and I'll shut up. So, I'm assuming...
This is why, I'm a lawyer, this is why lawyers don't like accountants, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Very good.
Frank from London.
Sure.
Sort there. There's more lawyer jokes than there are accountants. I'm assuming somebody has done a calculation to say that there is you know, by approving up to 5,000, we haven't gone beyond 50% of the profit for some period. Because I look at the budget numbers, and the profit is only $500.
Right. So there's been years where 2 years ago we had a loss, so we didn't give a gift that year either.
Right, but the policy is 50% of the income,
yeah.
Right? And that would be plus you 10,000 of income in order to get 5,000.
Right.
Right.
So in 2016 we had $10,000 net income,
okay.
And that would be the 10,032. That would be the 5,050.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, go right ahead.
I'm a lawyer and an accountant.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, that's a bad combination.
Is the policy 50% of the prior year's income? Is that the way it works?
Yes.
Okay. So then it probably makes sense to put that in the budget only because then it would be approved by the membership and you wouldn't, I think, get into this whole, are you exceeding the $1,000 because it's in the budget?
Right, that's a good point. That's an excellent idea. Yes?
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Is it 50% of the income or is it 50% of the surplus?
Net income. Net income.
Surplus.
Okay, I forget the question.
Surplus.
Surplus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I move we accept the bylaws of...
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. So.
Thank you, June.
Yes.
And thank you, members, for your input. Our last committee report is coming from the nominations chair, and that is Sue Connor, immediate past president.
Okay, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to object to this. We're really excited this year to have 2 people who have stepped forward to join the board. But first, we do have one of our board members who is up for re-election, and that is June Morris. And so you know a little bit about her background because she is an attorney and she's been working on our bylaws. Her information is up there on the board, and she has vast experience, and we're really happy to have her continue on the board. But we also have 2 people that have come forward and are willing to join us on the board. And as you know, this is all volunteer, and it does require some time, mostly during the summer. But we do work hard during the summer for you. And the first person that came forward, actually not in this order, because we had talked to Mary Pikars a year ago, but she had some other things going on and couldn't join us. But Scott Leber, is Scott here? Scott, would you just stand up so everybody can see? Thank you so much for coming forward. I do want to chat with you just briefly. I was hoping to meet you before the meeting, but...
Got it late last night in the rain.
So after the meeting, if you just stay a couple of minutes so we can have a chat. Scott is from Nanuet, New York, and he is a certified insurance counselor, and he has a summer place here in Eastham, like all of our part-time people. He's the owner of Leber Group and an underwriter for St. Paul Insurance Companies, and he serves on the Rockland Community Foundation Board of Directors and the United Way of Rockland County Board of Directors. And he is also a member and a past president of Nanuet Rotary. Thank you so much for coming forward, and we look forward to having you sit with us on the board.
I look forward.
Mary Pikars, I saw Mary over here somewhere. Mary is actually also a neighbor of mine here in the summer. Mary is from Southborough, Mass, and she's a real estate person, and has a varied background, including a licensed family child care provider. Oh, that takes a lot of patience. Oh my. And team lead and training document working on healthcare providers, project managers, and resellers to provide training solutions and tracking activities nationwide. And she's the director of the annual fund for the St. Mark's School in Southborough. And anybody who can raise money, we need them. And she also has worked with a variety of companies such as Hyperon Software, DuPont, IPM, and 9X Business Center. Mary, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you on the board. I would like to ask for approval for the nominations. Thank you, Larry. Second? Second. Any objections? Hearing none. Welcome to the board. And I'm also going to do a little pitch for anybody else who would like to join us. When I first joined the board, there were about 18 of us, and we're now down to
11 total, including officers.
Okay, so we need some help. There are a lot of tasks that need to be done. A lot of our work, especially off-season, is done via email, and it's very rewarding. You get to meet a whole lot of nice people in town. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, right now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, and it is Kathy Tevya, who is the acting superintendent of the Seashore. Kathy has been on the Seashore management team here as the deputy superintendent overseeing park operations, financial management, and new initiatives. Her career began in Gettysburg at the battlefield, and she's been at the Eisenhower Home, the Independence in Philadelphia, the Lowell and the Northeast office in Boston, and many of her assignments have focused on education, outreach, partnership, and development. She completed her undergraduate studies at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, and she holds a master's degree from the Bank Street Graduate School of Education in New York. She is also a member of the adjunct faculty at Johnson & Wales University in Providence. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. I'm happy to be here and chat with you a little bit. I haven't been in this room since we threw a big party for George Price on May 11th. And he walked out the door into his retirement, and I've been in that seat ever since. It's been a very interesting summer. And what we do, for those of you who've been in government, you know there's lots of rules and regulations about what happens next. And I was appointed as an interim superintendent for no more than 4 months. So can't go more than 120 days while they announce the job and run it through a competitive process. And I'm anticipating that perhaps by the holidays, we'll have a permanent appointment of a new superintendent here at the park. But it's been a pleasure, and I think maybe you know I have an awesome management team behind me. So I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, but I certainly have them on the staff. I got a lot of questions. Well, first of all, let me acknowledge the town of Eastham and the great collaboration that we've had on a lot of projects over the last 8 years or so, my tenure here. And also, I know that you were very kind in placing our Friends magazine out there in the lobby. So I know there are some active volunteers for the Seashore here from Eastham as well. I get a lot of questions, especially since the inauguration, about where do we fall in government? And without belaboring, taking you back to your civics lesson, I did kind of provide a couple of slides that I use when I'm answering that question, just so everybody knows, where does Cape Cod National Seashore fall from the White House down? And so there are 3 branches of government, and we're in the executive branch. So the National Park Service is in the executive branch. The others are the legislative and judicial branches. TJ is going to have to keep up with me on the slides there. Fifth is 15 cabinet posts. Next. And the Department of the Interior is, the Secretary of the Interior is one of those cabinet appointees. And so within the Department of the Interior are many land management agencies. Fish and Wildlife, National Park Service, BLM, USGS, and many others. And then there's an Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that the National Park Service falls under. Next. The thing that hasn't changed is the mission of the National Park Service, established through the Organic Act of 1916. And we celebrated our 100 years as an agency last year, so I hope many of you came out and joined us in some of the special celebrations we had. But we basically, there are two missions defined in this Organic Act. One is to preserve the resources, whether they're natural resources, cultural resources, the beautiful historic resources we have here, to leave them unimpaired for future generations. That's a mission that lasts forever, does not change. And then the second in this statement is to provide for the enjoyment of people. So you get to enjoy them. How do we open the doors and provide for some recreational use, some educational use, to enjoy nature? So that's our mission. That has not changed. The National Park Service as an agency, just a quick overview, there are 417 units now, including all of those national monuments that were authorized in the last year and a half. About 20,000 employees nationwide, and we are divided into 7 regions, so we're in the Northeast. Cape Cod National Seashore is one of those 417 units. Most special one to us. And it was an idea. The legislation was actually first proposed as early as 1930, but then it was introduced in 1959 and finally signed into legislation in 1961 by JFK. So we have a rich history here. During the legislation, when this park was created, it also created a new model for establishing national park sites. Very, very different approach from previous. Prior to the 50s, many of national park units were established from land that was already public land. Not so here at Cape Cod. Congress authorized millions of dollars and to actually purchase property to create this national seashore. It spans 6 towns, you all know that. And Congress also authorized the first advisory commission. So you've seen that in the headlines over the last year. Will the advisory commissions proceed? And right now, we're very proud that this is the oldest advisory commission in the National Park Service. We've had, I think, 306 meetings to date. And so we hope that in September we'll pick up those meetings again. We're waiting, we proposed a date and we're waiting for approval for that. But it's a very important way to have dialogue with all of the communities. The New Cape model preserved 44,000 acres, 400 species. We have 6 guarded beaches, over 300 buildings, and 44 of them are historic in some way. The 2 visitor centers, Salt Pond is obviously our gateway to the park. 2 amphitheaters, we have 80 occupied houses by staff, 20 permanent staff, the rest occupied by our temporary staff. We have a huge fleet of vehicles and equipment that we have to take care of, 2 auto shops. 4.5 million people a year visit us, and we have a $60 million backlog of deferred maintenance needs. So we do calculate most of this data so we know where we are. We have a budget of about $7.6 million. I thought I would just go quickly over how the park is divided in operations, in case you don't know just how our staff is organized. Park operations consists of a planning division, administration. We have visitor and resource protection. That's all of our rangers who have law enforcement capability. Environmental health and safety. Facilities management. We have a big crew out there, whether they're working on buildings or roads and trails. Natural resource management and science. We have over 10 professional scientists on staff right now. Probably the largest science staff on the East Coast, other than the Everglades in a national park. So we are very proud of the amount of science we do here and how much we work with outside researchers. Our Interpretation and Cultural Resource Division manages the visitor centers and does a lot of education and outreach. And finally, we have a management team made up of the chiefs of each one of these divisions. I think we're going to run through these pretty quickly. Planning obviously takes care of a lot of our lands issues and questions that come up, zoning, weighing in on partnerships, and she also runs the AmeriCorps program, which is a great partnership. Administration, that's where we all have all of our financial management and all of the big questions, what are we going to do in the future, and how do we get enough staff in to do the job. Visitor and resource protection encompasses the lifeguard operation that's out there on the beach, runs the off-road vehicle corridor, fire management, do some local law enforcement. We have to build relationships and collaboration with each of the town chiefs. Also runs our fee collection operation and the concessions and special use permits in the park. Facilities and maintenance were split up into different divisions: custodial, roads and trails, and buildings and utilities. Natural resource staff I talked a little bit about. I don't know if you've been to our Science in the Seashore Symposium, but it happens every September, so I think it's September 14th this year, at which our scientists are presenting some of the latest data and research that they've completed, but also our visiting researchers are presenting some of the findings from their research. It's a great way to spend an afternoon with us and learn about the science that's happening. Interpretation and cultural resources, visitor center. Anyone in the room, one of our volunteers that helps us out in the visitor centers? We have so many from Eastham, and they do a great job for us, helping us out, greeting people at the Salt Pond Visitor Center and helping them figure out an itinerary and how to see this park. We talked a lot about change on our staff, especially with, next slide, especially with the retirement of George Price, the superintendent, who's been here, he was here for 12.5 years. So change in leadership really generates a lot of questions. What happens next? And so we're in that period with the staff, also focusing on the mission that has not changed and the legislation that created the park has not changed. Some things are changing, and they are beyond our control. So you know we deal a lot with this topic of building resiliency against climate change, sea level rise, and the speed of erosion, particularly, you know, at Nauset Lake Beach and on the ocean side. We've had to remove facilities, and that is our response. We're not going to fight Mother Nature. We take down the facilities before they do any environmental damage and try and remove them from the bluff. This is a familiar site for many of you here. If you were here in the winter, this was a particularly bad winter at Nauset, and we were keeping a very close eye on erosion on that bluff because the septic tank for this facility is about 15 feet from the current bluff. I received a text this morning with the heavy rains and storms last night. We've lost a little bit more of that bluff overnight, and that septic tank is ever closer to the edge. So we do have a plan to remove that facility. We thought we were going to have to do it last winter or last spring, but then we saw the erosion back off a little bit. This is like reading the tea leaves, not knowing what nor'easters were coming up the coast, and we took the chance that we could actually get one more year out of this facility. I'm thrilled to say that it's August 19th and we're looking good there. But we do have a plan for removing it in the fall, and that's just inevitable. We received some funds from our regional office and from the Washington office to do an emergency demolition of that. It hasn't been quite scheduled yet, but it'll certainly be between late September and the holidays. We have to beat the winter storms again. But we did replace, which I think for the last time, the stairs that were damaged. We did a very long study with several engineers. We received many suggestions and ideas from the community. When we sat down for a couple of days with our architects from our Denver Service Center and some local engineers, coastal engineers, and we weighed several new ideas for how to retain access to this beach without having to put in new stairs every year. And it turned out, weighing the cost benefit and the sustainability of any of those options, wooden stairs was still the least expensive route. So we'll stick with that, but in the meantime, we did plan another walking path from the parking lot to have access a little bit further down, lower on the beach. So we're going to probably implement that for next season as well. You might see some activity out there this year. So Nauset Light Beach is a very complicated site right now that we're dealing with. And we're going to do our best to maintain access, to maintain parking, to maintain the level of parking for the town as well as the park. And we have proposed a new building, bathhouse facility, restrooms, and showers that is in line with many national projects for the National Park Service. And it looks like we may receive some of that planning money as early as 2019 with a construction year of 2020. And that's pretty good based on how long it usually takes for a project to move up a national list. So we're hopeful that that will stay on track. And in the meantime, we'll be planning some temporary facilities out there for visitors. You know, we have some other challenges in the park. We closed down the Red Maple Swamp Trail several years ago, and I have to say the Friends of Cape Cod National Seashore was so instrumental in raising some funds, raising awareness, keeping this high up on our priorities, and they ran last year's gala to benefit the Red Maple Swamp Trail, and they donated $25,000, and the National Park Service matched that with the remaining funds it would take to replace this. So I think I have another slide there with the replaced, the work that's been done. We're not done, but we've replaced the worst portion so far. We also have a project at the amphitheater at Salt Pond Visitor Center to restore that. It's done. We started it, we announced it last year as a centennial project, and we're thrilled that the doors are open and we'll be kicking off a great event, actually an event that we had last year with the Out of Cape Symphony, and they'll be back on August 25th for another concert entitled Sanctuary. So they're thrilled to come back to a brand new facility. The Friends also, I'm sticking with the Eastham properties here, the Friends were also instrumental in an initial donation to repaint and repair the historic Penniman House, Whaling Captain's House in the Fort Hill Historic District. So we're thrilled that it was done. It looks magnificent. The barn is the next building on the list, and I think we got the funds to start that in 2018. So that whole landscape should look like the Park Service is taking care of it. Three Sisters is being renovated now. You see our staff there working. The Nauset Bike Trail received work, I think, 4 years ago. It's looking pretty good. The Nauset Marsh Trail is getting a lot of attention now. Our Roads and Trails crew are keeping it up. So that's a lovely trail. The tram operation is in full swing, but not everything looks good. So this is a photograph of the Heron Cove North parking lot up in Provincetown. So we still have our challenges with major erosion and a loss of visitor facilities. We did an environmental assessment in 2013 and completed a plan for what to do with this site. So the north parking lot will be removed and moved back from the coast next year. We did receive funding for that, and we're not going to fight Mother Nature. We really just have to have a plan of retreat and sustainability. So we need a design, and we need facilities that will last 20 years or more when we replace them. That's Heron Cove North. That's what it looks like now, if you have not seen it. We just had a contractor who finished last week removing most of the material from the beach. The lot is still there. It still provides a bike access from the bike trail, but it looks a lot nicer right now. Okay. It's just some conceptual drawings for the new parking lot up north, and it basically will move back away from the coast about 190 feet. We have some major wetland restoration projects going on in the park. Hatches Harbor was a great success about 8 years ago, and our next project is the Heron River restoration, which has years and years of science behind it and an environmental impact statement that's complete, and we're in the permitting phase for that project. Restores over 1,100 acres of wetlands in Wells Lake Shore. We talk about other changes. We've had to come up with some very new approaches to dealing with the ecosystems that are in the park. So sharks and seals are a big story for us, and we have focused our messages primarily on safety. So asking visitors to learn about sharks, learn about the ecosystem, and make wise choices on when and where they swim. And secondly, part of our plan is to have a very, very good collaborative, comprehensive response plan with the towns. So those two fronts, that's been our focus. New signage at the beaches, everyone was very collaborative. There are many of the beaches on the Outer Cape. We're flying a new purple shark sign at all of the protected beaches to just remind people they are there. We extend what we do. I mentioned that we have about a $7.5 million budget. That's our congressional authorization on an annual basis. We also have an opportunity to apply for special funds, whether it's for repairing our facilities, rebuilding roads through transportation money. So we have probably averaged $6 to $10 million over the last 5 years or so, bringing in additional funding for all of these projects that I've just shown you. So I think our staff is pretty active and engaged, and they're not missing any opportunities to bring money to Cape Cod where we can. We've gotten excellent assistance from the Friends group, Friends of Cape Cod National Seashore. So when they give us seed money for something, it makes it a lot easier for us to generate a match for those funds from federal monies. So some of the partnerships that are very popular and successful at the seashore, the AmeriCorps Cape Cod Fire Corps. They do a lot of work with us on a 10-month appointment, and work with our fire manager, Dave Crary, and they help us basically maintain habitat, burn down fuels where there may be some threat to local houses and our facilities, so they've been a tremendous crew. We entered into a new partnership last year with Cape Cod Healthcare. It's called Healthy Parks, Healthy People, and they have dedicated a lot of their resources, along with some of their medical staff, cardiologists, and others who are at Salt Pond Visitor Center most mornings in the summer, and they're taking blood pressures, weight, all these things that will help you get on track to create a walking program for yourself. So it's really about using the National Seashore to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Stewardship and public programs. We have many rangers out there who are doing day-to-day programs to teach children and families and visitors just how special these resources are and why we should preserve them. Climate-friendly parks initiative. So we're trying to cut back on all of the emissions and the waste and the energy that we use in the park. And our goal was to cut it back by 20% since 2013, I believe. And we're on track to achieve that. We're focused on building sustainable facilities. This is a photograph of the new Bathhouse facility at Heron Cove that was put up in 2013. And it was designed on pilings, on a boardwalk, so that the facility, when erosion gets closer, could be deconstructed and moved. They're all small pieces of one facility, and that's the concept, is that we could actually move this facility back when and if we need to. Oh, just a couple of before and after pictures to show that our grounds crew is out there and busy. And then I thought I would end with just a few universal thoughts on, first of all, what our focus is going forward. And that's basically planning for the effects of climate change and sea level rise. That is in the forefront of what all of our future planning. Watching the intensity of visitor use and the ecosystem protection. So we're trying to balance use and preservation. and maintaining the Cape Cod character, which is in our legislation. It's a very important part of our legislation. We do have some universal concerns, same things that the towns and everyone on the Outer Cape is dealing with. So it is living in a coastal environment and the impacts of that, the cost of living, so for our staff and drawing enough people out here to work in our jobs, the availability of housing, and maintaining a seasonal workforce. So those are some of just the universal issues that we all face living out here in this beautiful place. And thought I would just save a few minutes for questions. Yes?
There's been some recent news about the reduction, possible elimination of some national sites. What governmental power controls the future of national parks or the national seashore, which I guess is a national park?
A national seashore is different than from a national monument. Monuments are created can be legislated by the president and authorized by the president. The national seashore and national parks, different designation, were authorized by Congress. So it would take legislation to change any of the current national parks that we have. Yes?
What are you doing to manage the private housing on the national seashore?
What do you mean by?
Aren't there a bunch of private homes that are owned?
There are private properties. There are over 600 private properties in the seashore.
How many?
600. And when the legislation that created the park, there was a date by which the owners of the private property had to prove that they had an improved property before September 1st of 1959, I believe. So they had to prove that they were owners of that property and they had a building or some improvement on it. And they received, those private property owners received a certificate of suspension from condemnation. So they have the right to live on that property. That's their property. And we work with the private property owners when there are issues, but they basically have all the rights of private property owners in a national park. Yes?
I've read or heard that there are many, many empty houses on the seashore that have been empty since the seashore was created. They're still there. Is there any provision to take them down?
So the question was that there are many empty houses in the national seashore. We've been working over the last 12 years to remove any of the vacant houses based on whether they were a safety hazard or what condition they were in. So either use them for an administrative purpose, housing for our employees, or if they were beyond repair, put them on a demolition list. So I believe that demolition list is down to about a dozen houses. So we will keep working at it. We try to identify the top priorities each year, which houses are in the worst shape, which can we bring back from the brink. But we definitely have a strategic plan to try and remove or use all of the vacant structures.
Are you doing anything about reducing the seal population?
No, we're not. And we never will, because the National Park Service is a conservation organization. We don't manage nature. It's part of the ecosystem here, and so we'll teach people about it. We'll contribute to protecting the entire ecosystem, but we are not in a position nor have a role in managing any of the species populations. Yes?
Kathy, I just want to thank you for your public service, and I think you demonstrate that government, and there's many public servants up at the panel here, do important and good work for all of us in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have very dedicated staff at the seashore. We're very, very lucky to have them all. And I think, how much time are we? Is there one final question? Did I already get? Go ahead.
I just have a question. You must be measuring the rate of erosion, like an ossified piece. How much are we losing? Every year it seems like those dunes are getting lower and lower and lower.
Yes, we're keeping a close eye on all of the erosion in the park. When I arrived here in 2009, I accompanied George to most of his presentations and everything that he did as the deputy. And he could state with some confidence that the average rate of erosion on the outer coast was 3 to 5 feet a year. So in the last 3 years, I think in 2 years at Nauset Light, we lost 48 feet. 1 year was 18 feet. I mean, we just watched, and the scientists pointed out to us that, you know, as sea level rises, it really, the storms and the force of those storms come over Georges Bank so much easier, and it doesn't break down the force of those storms. So it also can vary from year to year, or 10 years on, 10 years off. They called it a hot spot, Nauset Lake Beach. And so we don't know where that hot spot will ever be, whether it will move, but we have to be ready to react, and we have to plan our future facilities to be resilient to those changes.
So what are you planning? Again, like I said, you just, I mean, 2 years you lost 48 feet. I mean, I remember years ago, back 1996, when they moved the Nauset Lighthouse back, right? I mean, you must have projections when you moved it back, how long it would take to get there. So so you lost 48 feet, what are you projecting that going forward?
As land managers, we really have to take the best science that we have at the time.
Right.
And so you look back as far as you can't have data. Luckily, this park has over 30 years worth of scientific data to look at. And then you look forward and project as well as you can what the pattern might be. So at Nauset Lake Beach, we know we have to demolish things this year. We are planning for a new facility towards the back, at the very back of the footprint of that parking lot. That's our conceptual design right now. And we assume that we'll take a page out of the Heron Cove bathhouse that we saw and actually apply the same concept. So if we build something new there, it should be movable, it should be relocatable. And that is probably the best thing that we can do in terms of maintaining access to that beach there. Eventually the parking lot will get rolled back. I mean, we'll have to do, as we see what progresses there, we'll have to take the right step at the time. But the future, we're looking at a future where we maintain access to Nauset Lake Beach and we provide visitor services there to the best that we can. Thank you so much, all of you, for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy, for that very informative talk, not only of the National Seashore, but of the Park Service in general. I know I learned a lot of things about the Park Service that I wasn't aware. I thought I knew pretty much everything that was going on in the National Seashore, but it was very nice to have Kathy come and speak with us, to finally put a face to the person who was our acting superintendent, and learn some things, especially about Nauset Light, which is a beach that is near and dear to Eastham. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to speak next. We're going to be hearing from Jackie Beebe, our town administrator.
Thank you so much. Kathy and I have had the great pleasure and challenge of following some longtime and beloved leaders. George Price certainly was an amazing superintendent, and I think, you know, all of you have appreciated Sheila Vanderhoff over the years, 25 years in Eastham in the leadership role. Quite amazing. So hopefully we're just trying to hold our own, I think, Kathy and I at this point, but exactly. I have to say I'm more in awe of the seashore and Kathy's job now that I have just learned today that their budget for the entire park is a quarter of what the town of Eastham's annual budget is. So, you know, I bow to you because I know we struggle just to make our ends meet with what we have, and I can't imagine what it's like to have the whole park and all of those 44,000 acres. Wow. So thank you. We have a really warm relationship, I think, with the Park Service here in Eastham. I have worked for other towns that had less of a relationship, so it's delightful that the town and the Seashore Park collaborate on so many issues, and maybe next year we can spend some time talking about that, because I think it would be an interesting conversation where we intersect. But for the people who were here in July, I'm going to try and cover the same material because it's important, I think, but I'll try and do it as quickly as possible without speed talking. So the biggie, the water project, I just wanted to update people. We are wrapping up phase 1. Should be done this fall, November, December. That project has had 8 contracts and provided the backbone of water mains, the tank, 2 well fields, and basically has connected, or will be able to connect 2,100 parcels. So a third of the entire system is in this first phase. And we are ending it with 597 customers being served by public water. We're ahead of schedule, and I'm delighted to report we're $4.8 million under budget in phase 1. I say that with some, awareness that that may not be the case in phase 2. Phase 2 is going to be longer. We will be going out to bid over the next 6 years, so depending on how interest rates go and the construction bid process is, we may catch up to budget, but we're hoping that we will have some money left over to use towards road repair and replacement, which is another topic I'll get to. So basically we're working to finish phase 1. We're hooking up the South Eastham residents that were on the Orleans water system. They'll be hooked up this fall, moved over to ours. And in phase 2, we're going to be starting phase 2, contracts 9, 10, and 11. We'll be going out to bid late August, later this month or early September, starting construction in October. What we're doing now for phase 2 for the subsequent years is we'll do 1 south project, 1 middle project, 1 north project, so that we'll try and be fair and even. And if you'd like to know where your property is on that plan of phase 2, it's right on our website. If you go to the Town of Eastham website, you can see, click on a cursor to go to the water website, and it'll take you there, and you can follow prompts and find out where you are in phase 2, or you can call any one of us. I have business cards here, and I'm happy to take calls or emails about those things and get them to the right staff. Everyone wants to know about the ISO rating, and we're getting increased calls and concerns about that. We have done everything that we can do, and the chief has. We have turned in all of our materials. They did come out in the spring and do a full evaluation of all our facilities. We meet all the criteria, so we're just waiting for their quarterly rating, which should come out in September. We were told that we might be rated in June, so we got sort of excited about that, but we didn't get into the June cycle, so again, we're hoping mid-September we'll have some news for you. I'm sorry, the Insurance Service Office, and it rates the town in terms of your insurance costs. So basically, how fast can we put out a fire? How fast, what is they rate training, they rate equipment, they rate staff, they rate water supply, which is where we've always sort of failed in the past because we didn't have hydrants. Now we have hydrants, so we're expecting our rating to be lowered, which means your insurance cost should go down. So everyone's, anxiously awaiting that, because anytime we can get a reduction in something, we're looking for that. Upcoming items other than water, we have completed a pavement management study. We did this along with the first phase of the water to assess, before we cut into any roads, what their condition was and what a repair replacement schedule might be. We don't have money appropriated for that at this point. Again, we may be able to use some of the water funds for that, but the Board of Selectmen will be taking a look at that over the next year to prioritize what roads are going to be repaired and replaced and what the schedule of that will be. A couple of other capital costs that might be coming up for the annual town meeting would be Rock Harbor improvements. We have a side of Rock Harbor that is highly underused and not really very accessible to a lot of residents, so we're looking to try and upgrade that harbor, make more use of it on the Eastham side. We have appointed a new Shellfish and Waterways Committee to look at regulations and recommendations about how to better use our shellfish grants and our natural resources around Rock Harbor. So that may be, it most likely will be an article for the annual town meeting in May. We also have some police station improvements that we need to do. The building is in good shape, but it needs some updates. You know, it's been 25 years since we touched Town Hall or the police station. Town Hall's doing great, but the police station, the locker rooms, the kitchen areas, the high-use areas in the basement really need to be updated. Another item is that we are starting this fall a strategic planning process. The Board of Selectmen and I both felt that, you know, after 25 years under Sheila's management, with a change, it would be a good time to take a look at what are our priorities, what is our appropriate staffing level, what should we be spending money on, what does the town want, what is the desire of the town in terms of service levels. So we'll be starting that process in the fall. They've appointed a group. There's 2 at-large members to that group, so I encourage any of you who might be interested in following that process. We certainly hope that the Part-Time Resident Taxpayers Association will be a part of that process, and I want to try and open up some communication so we get from you your ideas about where the town should go and what priorities we should have over the next few years.
Since we are part-time residents but full-time taxpayers, when will our votes be counted to do some of these things? Because we are not counted, and as a matter of fact, we've had a house here for many, many years. We had to sit in separate sections so there would be no confusion.
Right.
And I'd just like to know if there is any way we could be counted to get some of these things done.
I think you can be counted in terms of your voice heard and your input into a project like strategic planning that will set our goals. That you can be heard in. We can't change the state law that requires that you choose where you vote. So we don't, as town officials, we don't have control over that. And I know some people vote one person in one place and one person in another. You can do that. But you know, it's difficult. And at 61% of the, you know, taxpayers of the town, it's a lot, and we understand that, and we appreciate that you hang in here and contribute to the town as much as you do, really. So I want to discuss at the July meeting, we talked a lot about zoning and zoning changes and the dollar store and affordable housing, and we had the Zoning Board of Appeals members here. I want to do a little snapshot of what they said and some updates for you since I last met with you in July. Basically, the Board of Selectmen and the ZBA together feel strongly that we should oppose the Tea Time project, and we are doing that legally. They have appealed the zoning board decision, and we are in certain mediation negotiations with them to try and make that development more of what Eastham would like to see and less about what a developer would like to see. So that's ongoing, and I think the next hearing is sometime in October. The ZBA members talked a lot about concerns about growth, especially in the commercial areas along Route 6. And to that end, Paul Lag, our town planner, did apply for a grant, and we are having a technical assistance panel come down from Boston and I believe UMass Amherst as well to help us look at our zoning bylaws and create a plan going forward that might help us address some of those issues. and very dramatically, and I'm extremely proud of their initiative and leadership in this area. The Board of Selectmen voted to request from the Cape Cod Commission that our commercial districts in Eastham be designated as a District of Critical Planning Concern, a DCPC. What that does is it will freeze any development along the Route 6 corridor until we get to town meeting with new zoning bylaws. So it is a very dramatic way to say, we need help, we can't control this development, and it doesn't, we're concerned about basically, you know, traffic, congestion, and the character of our town. And we want to have more time to figure out how to address those things and how to address those in a very thoughtful way that won't limit the kind of development that we want to have in town, but that will prevent some of the large-scale developments that we know we don't want. So that's kind of where they are, and that will come to a hearing on August 31st. So hopefully the Cape Cod Commission will approve that, and then we will move forward between the Technical Assistance Panel and the Cape Cod Commission, working together to craft some better bylaws for the annual town meeting. So that's a thumbnail sketch. Dollar General will not be prevented from, because they already have an application before us. So Dollar General is kind of out there in limbo right now. The Board of Selectmen did ask the Cape Cod Commission specifically to help us with designating that as a development of regional impact. We have so many acronyms for all these things, which basically will take the discussion from our zoning and planning boards to the Cape Cod Commission, and they'll have to prove to the Commission that they're not impacting traffic and all of those things. So we have a moment to sit with Dollar General and try and do some negotiations about perhaps what that might look like, how that might impact Eastham, and all of the above. So we're taking every steps we can legally take to try and address this issue, and so far, you know, so far so good. We are doing a couple of new things that I didn't talk about in July. We are updating our town website. We've just gone through the mock-ups and the staff discussion about it, and it should be starting this fall. So you will see some dramatic, hopefully, improvements in the ease of using our website and getting to the information that you need to get to. We also had a fantastic year last year in getting grant funding. And I just presented this to the Board of Selectmen a couple of weeks ago, because I think it is, you know, in the times when all of our expenses are going up, it's nice that we can pull in some money from other sources. And last year we pulled in about $358,000 in state and federal grants for various projects, a lot of them conservation projects, but also police safety and fire safety. They're always great about getting those grants, and it was terrific. It was a terrific year for us. The power load structures to help the fire department were a $100,000 grant in and of itself. So we're trying to do as much as we can, and I'd like to, you know, set a goal next year to keep doing better with that. There was just an article, not to toot our horns, but there was an article in the newspaper a few weeks ago about how Orleans doesn't have any. So I was happy. I was happy about that. The little town of Eastham can. So far this month in July, we have already been offered $314,000 in state and federal grants. And of course, sometimes these grants come with certain conditions, and that's the new news that I'd like to talk to you about most primarily this morning, is that $235,000 of that money is a federal grant from FEMA that we applied for this past February before Sheila left. The chief and Sheila applied for this grant to add 4 firefighter paramedics to our fire staff. So currently we have 16 staff in 4 teams. 4 teams? Yes. So this would add 1 extra person to each team. Basically, it is called the SAFER grant, and you might hear that word. Definitely was in the newspaper, I think, this past week or the week before. Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response is what SAFER stands for. And basically, it's a highly competitive national grant program that takes a look at small towns like Eastham across the nation who are not staying current with these federal standards for rescue, for fire, and emergency medical rescue times and staffing. And they look at those and they try and incentivize hiring new staff. The way they do it is to give us a 3-year grant. So the first year they would pay for 75% of those 4 employees, benefits, training, equipment, all of that. Or there's a match for some of it, but most of it. Then the second year, again, they pay 75, we pay 25. The third year, it switches over. We pay 65, they pay 35. And then the 4th year, we're on our own. So it presents a challenge for us to try and figure out how do we pay for these staff over time and what is the appropriate staffing level. So when I looked at it with fresh eyes, I thought, oh, this is not a good time to be adding staff, initially. But then I started to look at the statistics and the rationale and why the feds chose to give us the money, and I'm more and more convinced that we really do need to add this staffing level. Basically, we have not added any staff to our fire department since 2006, despite, continued complexity in medical rescues, continued area congestion and traffic, more and more people coming, more residents. It's amazing to me that we have gone 10 years without adding 1 firefighter or paramedic. The deployment of the fire engines with adequate personnel to be able to get to a fire, we are not meeting that standard most of the time. And that's one of the things they looked at. They want to have 4 firefighters on the scene within a certain amount of time so that 2 can be in the building fighting the fire, 2 can be outside managing the scene, getting water, doing all of the safety things in case something happens inside the building. We are not meeting that standard. We're going out with an average of 3 people, which leaves us sort of waiting for mutual aid. The mutual aid situation on the Cape is excellent and very collaborative, but we want to make sure that Eastham's doing its share in mutual aid, that we're not, draining Wellfleet resources or Provincetown resources, that we're all working together to keep our staffing up so that we can assist each other when needed. It's a critical element for us. We can't do it alone, and we know that. So we rely on the other towns, and they rely on us. We also want to have the ambulance personnel to backfill the station when we send out an ambulance. So, we want to be able to respond to that second call and have people in the station when the ambulance goes out to make it to that second rescue call without calling for mutual aid, or maybe to start the second emergency and call for mutual aid, but at least have someone ready and on deck. Because it takes, critical minutes to get those people from other towns, from other places. So I think the critical issue for us is that we don't currently have the levy capacity to add the 4 firefighters. If we did, we probably would have between 2006 and now. So this grant allows us to do that, but we will have to ask residents if they would like to have this new level of staffing. So we will have a special town meeting in October, along with, we're also having a special ballot election for the Cape Cod Tech School renovation project. That requires a vote of the public, so we will be scheduling a town meeting for this SAFER grant to accept it, basically the night before that vote. So I think it's the 23rd of October. We'll be doing a special, so we don't look forward to that, but we're gonna march forward. Again, I do think it's a critical element that we need to take a look at, but the chief and I and the Board of Selectmen feel very strongly that this is a citizen issue, that, you know, people need to look at the staffing level and the service level and decide, is this something that they want to spend more money on? We don't want to make that decision for you or for residents. Basically, we would need to increase the levy capacity by $366,000, which is for a house worth assessed at $478,000, which is, I guess, our new average, $58 a year. So thank you for your patience. That's the end of my quick summary. I want to allow Chief Colhawick to speak to you, and Amy, if you have any, and then basically the chief is here if you have any questions.
Good morning. I'm the last one to speak, so hopefully you're not too anxious to get out of here, but just wanted to go over just a few things. The rain has stopped, thank God. It was a heck of a night, and we survived, so that's the good news. Every year I come in here, and I was thinking as I was sitting there back in 2009, my first year here, I wasn't even hired. Sheila had asked me to come in, and all of you were so gracious to welcome me to this town. And it's been a fun ride since 2009, and I'll be starting my 9th year next week. So it's been a lot of fun. One of the big things in this community, and continues to be, is traffic problems, traffic issues. To that end, we're very, very aggressive and very serious about being out there, being visible, mandating my officers to make as many stops as they can, to curb speeding, to slow people down, and by doing that, hopefully, to lessen any kind of accidents, and especially any type of serious accidents involving fatalities. And so far this year, we've been able to do that. So we'll continue to do that. And I ask all of you out there, if you have a specific concern regarding speed or aggressive driving in your neighborhood, on your street, let me know. Either send me an email, see me today, I'll take down your information. We'd be more than happy to put out our speed trailer in your neighborhood. It's been an unbelievable asset for us to have that trailer. It slows people down, but it also allows us to gather valuable data regarding the speeders, the type of speeding, the time of the speeding, the average speed, and also the amount of cars that traverse that road on a daily basis and when they do that. So we can target our enforcement to that area. And it also helps Neil Andres, our DPW director, to know the frequency of cars in terms of how that'll affect his roadways. So it's a valuable tool, and I'd be happy to share that, but you have to let me know. Last meeting, Jackie had told me that some of you were concerned about some of the lighting cycles on the Route 6 Mass DOT lights. We're happy to say that we've sent a letter by way of Jackie to Mass DOT, and they are in the process of reviewing and hopefully changing some of the timing on some of those lights that'll assist us with getting across, both in terms of pedestrian crossings as well as some of the turn lanes on Route 6. I know Nauset was one of them, and I think also the one in front of Town Hall. But they're going to look at all of them in our community, so that'll be a great thing. We've been hounding them to get going on this, so they've agreed to do that. Kingsbury Beach Road. Some of you may be affected by what's been going on there. It's that every summer and every day, there's always something that brings controversy. Well, that's the controversy this year, this week. We have had a lot of people that live on some of the parallel roads to Kingsbury Beach Road who drive golf carts down there to bring some of their beach toys as well as some of their friends and family down to the beach instead of walking. The problem with that is they were parking along the road and affecting access to Chief Fahrencroft's people, to our people, and really causing some issues in terms of people not being able to turn around when they were dropping people off. So we had to step up our enforcement. And the other part of that is those golf carts legally are not allowed to be on a public access way and on a public road. So we had to be a little tough this week. Most people were happy. There were some that weren't. But I think for the most part we made some friends and maybe a couple enemies. But you know, I guess that's the nature of what we do. Cape Cod Rail Trail this year, you'll notice that we've enforced and we've stepped up our presence with our summer officers. Some of our young summer officers have been out there, mostly as an ambassador for the town and to remind people to pay attention. That thing there that's red that says STOP, we really mean you need to do that when you get to an intersection. So I think we've been successful. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from the residents and from some of the visitors, and we're going to continue to do that. We think it's important. We've gotten a lot of complaints about some of the bikers who just race through the intersections and cause near misses or cause crashes. We've done a lot on the Cape Cod Rail Trail. You'll notice the tunnel by Arnold's has those two signs up. That was something that the prior fire chief and myself and the town worked at with DNR to try to get them to address the problems with that tunnel, with the lighting, and we've done that. We haven't had nearly the amount of crashes in that tunnel that we did 2, 3, 4 years ago. Long term, they're telling me they're going to fix that tunnel, straighten it, so that we don't have the abrupt turns there, which have caused so many accidents. So we'll see if that happens, but we're pushing them to get that done. And lastly, I just want to talk about an initiative that came about through town meeting back in May. With what's been going on in Washington, with Homeland Security, with the immigration issues, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, it has caused a stir in many of the communities, especially in some of your larger cities, but even in your small towns. And there was a group of people that came forward and asked me to support an initiative which basically just fortifies and discusses the position that Eastham and specifically the police department has with regard to immigration, with regard to some of these ICE detainers that are out there that Homeland Security will put out and ask local law enforcement to get involved in enforcing immigration laws. To that end, there was a warrant article that went out that was passed by town meeting, and on the heels of that, I felt it was important to put out a brochure just to talk about our philosophy in terms of policing, in terms of profiling, in terms of how we treat people generally, and specifically in terms of immigration and folks that are here illegally. The Eastham Police Department doesn't go out looking for illegal immigrants. We've never done that. We didn't do that before. We're not going to do that now. The only time we would be involved in any type of situation like that is if someone commits another crime, specifically a felony, an arrestable offense, where then when we print them, when we fingerprint them, it comes out that they are also wanted by ICE. We would notify ICE, but we wouldn't hold them on that detainer. And that's our policy and that's our approach. So I have a brochure that's on the table there that talks a little more in depth about that, about our philosophy. You're welcome to take it and look at it. With that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it back to Amy. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Chief. I'm very happy to be back on the Board of Selectmen. I served previously for 6 years, and it's nice to be back. And we have, as you've heard, great staff in Eastham, so it's always a pleasure to work with these folks. A couple things Jackie touched on, the DCPC. We're really trying to get a handle on future zoning. There's quite a few large parcels still out there that are undeveloped along Route 6. And so we're trying to be proactive before something gets built that horrifies everyone in our community. And I think I can speak for the entire Board of Selectmen in saying that one of our main goals is to really preserve the community character of Eastham. As Kathy said, we're the gateway to the National Seashore, and we really don't want, a Walmart along our road or strip malls or those sorts of things. We're really trying to preserve what we have and maybe roll things back and quiet things down even more on our roads, but we'll see what happens. There were some questions before about, being able to vote in Eastham. And while you aren't, allowed to vote unless you choose to be residents of the town, you all have a voice. And you have to know that as a board member on the Board of Selectmen, we get a lot of letters and they make a huge impact. We do try to listen to people, and I'm always available. I have some cards up here with my personal phone number, my personal email. We really want to hear from everybody and encourage you to be involved in our committees. The only boards that you can't be on are regulatory boards, but we really encourage you to be involved. And I know a lot of you are. I see some familiar faces out here. So I know people are involved, and I encourage you to keep that up. As far as the taxes go, I always try to thank the part-time residents for our fantastic schools. My daughter recently graduated from Nassau Regional High School, and we have some of the best schools in the country. Massachusetts is up there, and we're near the top of Massachusetts. So we really want to thank everybody for their contributions. I know you all obviously don't have children in our schools, and we really appreciate having fantastic schools, so thank you. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to visit the new library, but I encourage you to do so. It's a fabulous building, and we have a new meeting room that I think could accommodate everyone here. So if you, in the future, thinking about, you mentioned maybe the Elks isn't available, check out the new library for your meeting space. You can have all your food and refreshments there. We have a kitchen. We have, some great facilities over there, and would love to accommodate you all. So I guess really I just want to hear from people, whether you write questions here, ask questions, email me, call me, and I think if you can't get a hold of me that way, through the town, all the selectmen really want to hear from everyone in our community who pays taxes and contributes. So thank you.
I'm going to start on questions. How many ambulances does Eastham have? 2. Will the new fire staff be cross-trained as EMTs? Yes, they'll all be either EMT or paramedics and firemen. Does Eastham charge competitive rates for ambulance services? Yes. And we look at our fees every year. Some of those fees, though, are set by state regulators. But yes, and we bring in approximately between $400,000 and $500,000 a year in ambulance fees that go back into the fire budget. I'll do some water questions. What year will the entire town get water prior to 2022? We have a few more years left, but we're working hard on it. And we are ahead of schedule, and we could increase that pace. However, that would also increase. We're trying to keep the tax rate even and not, make dramatic increases per year. If I hook up to the new water system and have 0 usage for 6 months, is there any charge for this time period? And will that change in the future? We have an annual fee that is charged in quarters. So for a residential home, I believe it's $98, and that's split into 4 payments of $24 and change. So if you were to have no usage charge, you would still get that $24 and change charge in the wintertime, and that's it. The rest would be usage charges. And I just got my first water bill and paid it. It was $38.50, and I can't believe it because we used so much water, and I irrigated, and I did laundry, and I'm just so impressed. And I paid it online, and you can get automatic alerts. It's a fabulous system. There are kids climbing all over the dunes at first encounter. Does the town have any concerns about this destruction? Absolutely, and I will give this to Shana Brogan, our conservation agent, and see what she has to say about it. I was also thinking, as I was sitting listening to Kathy, that next year I'd like to bring to the August meeting Beach and Rec Conservation, so we can hear more about some of that side of what we do. I know we tend to focus on public safety and finance and projects, but that would be a good, I think, update for you guys too. And this also goes to this next question. What specific measures is the town taking to address the effects of climate change in Eastham, especially flooding, tidal at Samoset Road, and rainfall at Beachbum Lane? I think it's multi-pronged. I think we're one of the grants that we just received is $79,000 from the state coastal zone management to work in collaboration with the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown and the town of Wellfleet to map how erosion and sand is moving on the bay side. We focus a lot of attention on the ocean side, and we're trying to sort of even out that and get a sense of where the erosion is on the bay side. Part of what we could do with this information, it would help us when we're dredging, when we're doing dredging projects like at Rock Harbor, to be able to put sand back in the places on the bay side where we actually are losing sand. So that's the sort of the whole notion of how we can use information like that. And Center for Coastal Studies has mapped the whole bayside except for Eastham and Wellfleet. So this will complete a piece of scientific research that'll be interesting to us and useful. And I think in terms of the other, it's really about drainage systems, and drainage systems, most cities and places that you may live in have better drainage than we do. We're on sand, we're at sea level, very difficult to do appropriate drainage and catch basins. They fill up with sand immediately. So under the pavement management, asset management program that I talked about earlier, we did look at drainage, and that is something that we have to look at, especially raising the level of some of the catch basins, some of the drainage, perhaps some of the roads. So it's a complex issue and expensive, but we have to look at it over the coming years, definitely. And the last two questions are about the old Nickerson property, the corner of Oakwood and Route 6. And I've recently had some, other complaints about this property. It looks terrible, and I think as we develop and spruce up other buildings around it, it looks even worse to us. But we have called to get that container full of debris removed. That's sort of sitting out front. Unfortunately, it is privately owned, and someone did purchase it, and so we have to work with a private property owner. But that's another piece of our bylaw that I think we definitely have had a lot of complaints about this year, and we need to look at is, people having junk in their yard, excessive amounts of junk, and hoarding, and those issues. So again, we have to look at that as part of our bylaw look this year. The last question I have, I forgot to tell you that the Board of Selectmen did vote to set the tax rate, and unlike some other towns in the area, we do have a factor of 1, so every property is being assessed at equal value. We will not, and the board is committed not to penalize non-resident taxpayers. So rest assured that that decision's been made for this year, and we'll go forward. We don't see any point in the future where that might change, but I suppose it could. And then in terms of rental tax, that is part of going through legislative process. The town administrators from across the Cape have written to legislators asking them to make some changes in that proposed legislation, but it's still moving through the process. The town has made no effort to do something separate this year from that. We're just waiting to see what happens with the state legislation. And that's the last question I have.
Jackie, I got
we got a question over here too.
never had to use glasses till this year.
That's terrible.
What is going to happen to fix the home address situation? That currently is being looked at. Paul Lag, our town planner, along with our town assessor, along with my Sergeant Schnitzer from the 911 perspective, are looking at all of that. So whoever this person is, grab one of my cards, email me specifically what the issue is with your address that you mentioned here, and we'll get right on it, because we're looking at that right now. And then I have another interesting question, and for those of you who are Seinfeld fans, this sounds like something right out of Seinfeld. Does the town have authority to regulate activities along Bay Beach front? Last week, between First Encounter and Kingsbury, there were two men driving golf balls during low tide. Remember that Seinfeld episode about the whale? I will talk to our beach director, along with, who else? Conservation? But I know there's nothing right now regarding that. So that might be something from a town perspective. If they're from town beaches, obviously that would not be a good thing. So, thank you.
Good morning, Ken Farragut, Fire Chief. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because Administrator Beebe has pretty much covered the subject matter. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown about the fire department. I've been very active in trying to upgrade things, upgrade personnel, upgrade equipment. I'm doing my best to fund them through grants the best I can. I feel it's very important to be able to offset the tax base by going with grants, and we've been very, very lucky. This is our third federal grant this year, and I would have never thought we would have gotten 3 this year. So I'm doing my best to fund those positions. A little bit on the fire department. The hydrants have been tremendous. I had a fire at the Red Barn early in the season. That could have been a very bad fire very quickly. It was in the attic in the roof area, and thank goodness we had that hydrant there. We were able to get in there quick. We had water if it went further than it did. So that was a tremendous feeling to me to be able to have that ability to have a positive water source. So it's really been a great thing for us. Very, very busy season for us. We've had a lot of different stuff this year. I had a very bad propane explosion last 2 weeks ago that injured somebody severely. A lot of accidents. We've done a lot of med flights. We have a lot of accidents on Route 6, which you all know about. 2 weeks ago, I had a 54-passenger school bus loaded with kids that was involved in an accident at the Rotary. Between the police and us and our mutual aid companies, we had to determine what they call an MCI on that, mass casualty incident, where I had to bring in ambulances from all over to transport these young kids, middle school kids. So we've been very, very busy with that. From us down has pretty much been stripped this summer, ambulances and personnel. We have had to go to P-Town, I think, 3 times as the primary ambulance on a medical run from Eastham because there were no ambulances between here and there. We usually try to move them up, but because the flow has been so heavy and so much of a demand on the system, for us to move them up, we keep moving, but then we get diverted to another run. So it's been very, very, very busy for us on that. So it's been almost 2 years for me. I find it hard to believe. November will be 2 years, and it's been a great pleasure to serve the residents and the part-time residents of the town of Eastham. I have one question. We addressed this last year. What is the best number to call if you have an emergency? It's still 911. Things are changing greatly. The police chief has a program now where we can start to locate people better than we used to be able to. It still goes to Framingham. The best thing to do is if you have anybody in your household, you're renting, a family member, somebody babysitting for grandchildren or children or something like that, make sure the address is written down for them so they know where they are, because when it goes to Framingham, they have to interpret it on where to send it. But the best thing to do is for somebody to know where they are. And if somebody falls, is unable to get through or speak even if they can dial 911, we can pretty much locate them today within a certain radius. So technology's changing and it's becoming better. So continue to call 911. I don't want to take any more of your time. Administrator Beebe, like I said, covered the SAFER grant, and have a great remainder of your summer.
town meeting now uses electronic voting.
Yes.
Therefore, my question to Tommy is, do you see a time when those people who cannot vote are allowed to sit with the general audience? Does it be segregated?
Okay, I want you to know that I had a little tussle with the town clerk about this at the town meeting last year, because there were little kids that came from the elementary school and they wanted to sit with their parents. And she was telling me that they could not sit with their parents because they weren't voters. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? So I said, you know, they are interested in the civic process. They are residents, and even though they're not old enough to vote, you know, they're not going to get an electronic device, so they shouldn't. So again, I think it's the issue, the electronics have gotten us now ahead of our sort of more archaic bylaws or rules on elections. So we will be working on that, absolutely, yes. I think it would be nice. Everyone's obsessed that someone will hand their clicker to someone else, but as I remind them, it's still one vote. So really, you can only vote once with those devices. So, you know, I don't know. We're working on it though, yes.
The clicker is a good idea because in the past, we had people who live here full-time have two hands up.
Right.
So they get 2 votes. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I know you're. I know you're not. And we still have the best turnout of town meeting of any town around us. It's really quite amazing, although, you know, the special would be less. But thank you so much for your time. I'm always impressed that you guys come out on a Saturday.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Chief Haywick. And thank you, Chief Parentoff, and also Amy for attending this morning. I have one question that I received on a postcard here, on an index card, about the donation for the library benches, that this person is concerned that when we make out the check, that we make it out so that it will be tax deductible for us. We are a nonprofit to begin with. I do not know the financial rules on that, but I'm sure that when the time comes that we make out that check, we will make it out to our best interest. Thank you. Thank you very much, members, for coming out again on Saturday morning. We appreciate your interest in wanting to know more about the organization and for making the effort to come out on, well, what isn't really a beautiful day today, but we've had certainly more beautiful days this summer. We've had a good turnout as well. Thank you very much. May I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Any opposed, opposition?